The Adventure of the Sussex Vampire. Holmes read carefully a note that the last post had brought him. Then, with a short, dry laugh, he threw it over to me. "This is both modern and old, both practical and very strange," he said. "I think it is the limit. What do you think, Watson?" I read as follows: 46 Old Jewry, November 19th. Vampires. Sir, our client, Mr. Robert Ferguson, of Ferguson and Muirhead, tea brokers of Mincing Lane, has asked us in a letter today about vampires. Our firm works only with machines, so the matter is not in our area. We have told Mr. Ferguson to visit you and explain it to you. We remember your successful work in the case of Matilda Briggs. We are, sir, faithfully yours. Morrison and Dodd, per EGC. Matilda Briggs was not the name of a young woman, Watson, said Holmes in a thoughtful voice. It was the name of a ship, connected to the giant rat of Sumatra, a story that the world is not ready for. But what do we know about vampires? Is it our area either? It is better than doing nothing, but this looks like a Grimm's fairy tale. Stretch out your arm, Watson, and see what V has to say. I leaned back and took down the great index book he pointed to. Holmes put it on his knee, and his eyes moved slowly and with love over the record of old cases and the knowledge of a lifetime. Voyage of the Gloria Scott, he read. That was a bad business. I remember you wrote about it, Watson, but I could not praise your result. Victor Lynch, the forger, venomous lizard or giller. A strange case. Vittoria, the circus beauty. Vanderbilt and the Yeggman, vipers. Vigor, the wonder of Hammersmith. Good old index. Nothing can beat it. Listen, Watson. Vampirism in Hungary, and again, vampires in Transylvania. He turned the pages quickly, but after a short, careful look, he dropped the big book with a sound of anger. Rubbish, Watson, rubbish! What have we to do with dead bodies that can only stay in the grave if a stake is pushed through their hearts? It is madness. But surely, I said, the vampire was not always a dead man. A living person might have such a habit. I have read, for example, about old people drinking the blood of the young to keep their youth. You are right, Watson. One of these notes mentions that legend, but must we take such things seriously? This agency stands on solid ground, and it must stay there. The world is big enough for us. No ghosts need to apply. I think we cannot take Mr. Robert Ferguson very seriously. Still, this note may be from him, and it may explain what is troubling him. He picked up a second letter that had been lying on the table, unnoticed while he was busy with the first. He began to read it with a smile of amusement, but soon his face grew serious with deep interest. When he finished, he sat for some time lost in thought, the letter hanging from his fingers. At last he suddenly woke from his dream. Cheeseman's Lamberley. Where's Lamberley, Watson? It is in Sussex, south of Horsham. Not very far then. And Cheeseman's? I know that country, Holmes. It has many old houses named after the men who built them long ago. You find Audleys, Harveys, Carringtons. The men are forgotten, but their names live on in the houses. Exactly, said Holmes coldly. It was part of his proud, closed nature that, although he quickly and clearly put new facts into his brain, he seldom thanked the one who gave them. I think we shall soon know much more about Cheeseman's Lamberley. The letter is, as I hoped, from Robert Ferguson. By the way, he says he knows you. Knows me? You had better read it. He handed me the letter. At the top was the address written. Dear Mr. Holmes, it said, I have been sent to you by my lawyers, but the matter is so very delicate that it is hard to explain. It is about a friend for whom I am writing. This man married about 5 years ago a Peruvian lady, the daughter of a Peruvian merchant. He met her when working with the import of nitrates. She was very beautiful, but because she was foreign and of a different religion, there was always some distance between them. After some time, his love grew colder, and he felt that their marriage might have been a mistake. He thought there were sides of her nature he could never know or understand. This was painful because she was a loving wife who seemed completely devoted to him. Now for the main point, which I will explain more clearly when we meet. This letter only gives you a general idea of the case and asks if you will be interested. The lady began to show strange behavior, very different from her usual gentle nature. The man had married before, and he had a son from his first wife. The boy was now 15, kind and loving, but sadly hurt by an accident when he was a child. Twice the wife was seen attacking this poor boy without any reason. One time she hit him with a stick and left a big mark on his arm. But this was a small matter compared to how she treated her own child, a sweet baby less than 1 year old. About a month ago, the nurse left the child for a few minutes. Soon she heard a loud cry of pain from the baby and ran back. She saw her mistress, the lady, bending over the baby and seeming to bite its neck. There was a small wound on the neck, and blood was flowing from it. The nurse was so shocked that she wanted to tell the husband, but the lady begged her not to and even gave her £5 to keep quiet. No explanation was ever given. For the time, the matter was left alone. It left, however, a terrible mark on the nurse's mind. From that time she watched her mistress very closely, and she guarded the baby with great care, for she loved him deeply. It seemed to her that as she watched the mother also watched her, and that whenever she had to leave the baby alone, the mother was ready to reach him. Day and night the nurse protected the child, and day and night the quiet, watchful mother seemed to wait as a wolf waits for a lamb. It may sound incredible to you, but I beg you to take it seriously, for the life of a child and the sanity of a man may depend upon it. At last there came one terrible day when the truth could no longer be hidden from the husband. The nurse's courage broke down. She could bear it no longer, and she told him everything. To him the story seemed as wild as it may seem to you. He knew his wife as a loving woman, and except for the attacks on her stepson, a loving mother. Why then should he hurt her own dear baby? He told the nurse she was dreaming, that her fears were madness, and that such lies about her mistress could not be allowed. But while they spoke, a sudden cry of pain was heard. Nurse and master ran quickly to the nursery. Imagine the feelings, Mr. Holmes, when he saw his wife rise from a kneeling position beside the cot, with blood on the baby's neck and on the sheet. With a cry of horror, he turned her face to the light and saw blood all around her lips. It was she, without doubt, who had drunk the poor baby's blood. So the matter stands. She is now kept in her room. No explanation has been given. The husband is almost mad. He and I know very little of vampirism beyond the name. We had thought it only a strange story from foreign lands. And yet here, in the middle of English Sussex, well, all this can be spoken of with you in the morning. Will you see me? Will you use your great powers to help a troubled man? If so, please send a wire to Ferguson, Cheeseman Slamberley, and I will come to your rooms at 10 o'clock. Yours faithfully, Robert Ferguson. P.S. I believe your friend Watson played rugby for Blackheath when I was 3/4 for Richmond. It is the only personal link I can give. Of course I remember him, I said as I put down the letter. Big Bob Ferguson, the best 3/4 Richmond ever had. He was always good-natured. It is just like him to be so worried about a friend's case. Holmes looked at me with thought and shook his head. I never know your limits, Watson, he said. There are always new things in you. Write a wire, good fellow. We'll examine your case with pleasure. Your case? We must not let him think that this agency is a place for weak minds. Of course, it is his case. Send him that wire and let the matter rest until morning. At exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, Ferguson came quickly into our room. I remembered him as a tall, thin man with long, loose limbs and great speed, which had taken him past many opponents. There's nothing more painful than to see the ruin of a fine athlete one has known in his best days. His large body had grown weak, his fair hair was thin, and his shoulders were bent. I fear I caused the same feelings in him. "Hello, Watson," he said, with a voice still deep and strong. "You don't look quite the same man you were when I threw you over the ropes into the crowd at the old deer park. I suppose I have also changed a lot, but it is these last 2 days that have made me old. I see from your telegram, Mr. Holmes, that it is useless to pretend I am here for someone else." "It is simpler to deal directly," said Holmes. "Of course, but you can understand how hard it is when one speaks of the woman one must protect and help. What can I do? How can I go to the police with such a story? And yet the children must be kept safe. Is it madness, Mr. Holmes? Is it something in the blood? Have you ever seen such a case before? For God's sake, give me advice, for I do not know what to do." "Very naturally, Mr. Ferguson. Now sit here, calm yourself, and give me some clear answers. I can promise you that I am not lost, and I am sure we shall find a solution. First, tell me what you have done. Is your wife still near the children?" "We had a terrible scene. She is the most loving woman, Mr. Holmes. If ever a woman loved a man with all her heart, she loves me. She was deeply hurt that I had discovered this terrible, this unbelievable secret. She would not even speak. She gave no answer to my blame, except to look at me with wild despair in her eyes. Then she ran to her room and locked the door. Since then she has refused to see me. She has a maid, Dolores, who lived with her before marriage, a friend more than a servant. Dolores takes food to her, though the child is in no immediate danger. Mrs. Mason, the nurse, has promised that she will never leave the baby, day or night. I can trust her completely. I am more worried about poor little Jack, for, as I wrote in my note, she has twice attacked him, but never really hurt him. No, she struck him cruelly. It is even more terrible because he is a poor harmless cripple." Ferguson's thin face softened when he spoke of his boy. You would think that the boy's condition would move anyone's heart. A fall in childhood and a twisted spine, Mr. Holmes, but he has the dearest and most loving heart inside. Holmes picked up yesterday's letter and read it again. "Who else lives in your house, Mr. Ferguson?" "Two servants who have not been with us long. One stable hand, Michael, who sleeps in the house. My wife, myself, my boy Jack, the baby, Dolores, and Mrs. Mason. That is all." "I understand that you did not know your wife well when you married her." "I had only known her for a few weeks." "How long had this maid Dolores been with her?" "Several years." "Then Dolores would know your wife's character better than you." "Yes, you may say so." Holmes made a note. "I think," said Holmes, "that I may be more useful at Lamberley than here. This is clearly a case for personal investigation. If the lady stays in her room, our visit will not trouble her. Of course, we would stay at the inn." Ferguson made a sign of relief. "That is what I hoped, Mr. Holmes. There is an excellent train at 2 from Victoria, if you could come." "Of course we can come. There's nothing pressing at the present. I can give you all my attention. Watson will come with us, of course. But before we go, there are 1 or 2 points I must be sure about. This unhappy lady, as I understand, has attacked both children, her own baby, and your little son." "That is true. But the attacks were of different kinds, were they not? She has bitten your son, once with a stick and once very cruelly with her hands. Did she ever give a reason for striking him?" "None, except that she hated him. She repeated it again and again." "Well, that is not unknown among stepmothers. We may call it a kind of jealousy. Is the lady jealous by nature?" "Yes, she is very jealous. Jealous with all the fire of her strong tropical love." "But the boy, he is 15, I understand, and probably very strong in mind, since his body has been limited in action. Did he give you no reason for these attacks? No, he said there was no reason. Were they friendly at other times? No, there was never any love between them. Yet you say he is affectionate. Never in the world was there such a devoted son. My life is his life. He cares for everything I say or do. Once again Holmes made a note. For some time he sat deep in thought. No doubt you and the boy were close friends before the second marriage. You were very near to each other, were you not? Very much so. And the boy, with his affectionate nature, was no doubt very devoted to the memory of his mother. Most devoted. He must be a very interesting boy. There's one more point about these attacks. Did the strange attack on the baby and the assaults on your son happen at the same time? In the first case, yes. It was as if some madness had taken her, and she showed her rage on both. In the second case, it was only Jack who suffered. Mrs. Mason had nothing to complain about with the baby. That certainly makes things more complicated. I do not quite understand you, Mr. Holmes. Perhaps not. One makes early theories and waits for time or fuller knowledge to prove them wrong. It is a bad habit, Mr. Ferguson, but human nature is weak. I fear that your good friend here has given too high a picture of my scientific methods. But for now, I will only say that your problem does not seem impossible to solve, and you may expect to see us at Victoria at 2 o'clock. It was evening on a dull, foggy November day when, after leaving our bags at the Chequers in Lamberley, we drove through the Sussex clay along a long, winding lane, and finally reached the lonely and ancient farmhouse where Ferguson lived. It was a large, spreading house, very old in the middle, very new in the wings, with high Tudor chimneys and a roof of horsham slabs, spotted with lichen. The doorsteps were worn into curves, and the old tiles of the porch were marked with the sign of a cheese and a man for the builder. Inside, the ceilings were crossed with heavy oak beams, and the uneven floors bent in sharp curves. The smell of age and decay filled the whole broken house. There was one very large central room where Ferguson led us. Here, in a great old fireplace with an iron screen dated 1670, a splendid log fire blazed and cracked. The room, as I looked around, was a strange mixture of times and places. The half-panelled walls might have belonged to the farmer of the 17th century, but the lower parts showed a line of fine modern watercolours. Above, where yellow plaster replaced the oak, hung a collection of South American tools and weapons, no doubt brought by the Peruvian lady upstairs. Holmes stood up quickly with his eager curiosity and studied them with care. He came back with eyes full of thought. "Hollo!" he cried. "Hollo!" A spaniel lay in a basket in the corner. It came forward slowly to its master, walking with difficulty. Its back legs moved unevenly and its tail dragged on the ground. It licked Ferguson's hand. "What is it, Mr. Holmes?" "The dog. What is wrong with it?" That is what puzzled the vet. He thought it was a kind of paralysis, spinal meningitis, but it is passing. He will be fine soon. Won't you, Carlo?" The dog's tail moved as if to agree. His sad eyes looked from one of us to the other. He knew we were speaking about him. "Did it begin suddenly? In a single night? How long ago?" "About 4 months ago." "Very strange and very suggestive. What do you see in it, Mr. Holmes?" "It supports what I had already thought." "For God's sake, what do you think, Mr. Holmes? It may be only a puzzle for you, but for me it is life and death. My wife a would-be murderer, my child always in danger. Do not play with me, Mr. Holmes. It is far too serious." The big Rugby 3/4 was shaking all over. Holmes laid his hand gently on his arm. "I fear there is pain for you, Mr. Ferguson, whatever the truth may be," he said. "I will save you from as much of it as I can. I cannot say more right now, but before I leave this house I hope to give you something clear." Please God, you may. Excuse me, gentlemen. I will go up to my wife's room and see if there's any change. He was gone for some minutes. During that time, Holmes continued his study of the objects on the wall. When our host came back, his sad face showed that there was no progress. With him came a tall, slim, brown-faced girl. "The tea is ready, Dolores," said Ferguson. "See that your mistress has all she may want." "She vera ill," cried the girl, looking at her master with angry eyes. "She not ask for food. She vera ill. She need doctor. I afraid to stay alone with her without doctor." Ferguson looked at me, asking with his eyes. "I should be very glad if I can be of use. Would your mistress see Dr. Watson? I take him. I not ask leave. She needs doctor. Then I will go with you at once." I followed the girl, who was shaking with strong emotion, up the stairs and along an old corridor. At the end was a heavy door with iron bands. I thought, as I looked at it, that if Ferguson ever tried to force his way to his wife, it would be not easy. The girl took a key from her pocket, and the heavy oak door creaked on its old hinges. I went in, and she quickly followed, locking the door behind her. On the bed lay a woman clearly burning with fever. She was only half conscious, but when I entered she lifted a pair of frightened but beautiful eyes and stared at me in fear. When she saw a stranger she seemed relieved, and sank back with a sigh upon the pillow. I went closer with a few gentle words, and she lay still while I took her pulse and temperature. Both were high, and yet I thought her state was more of mental and nervous strain than of real illness. "She lie like that for 1 day, 2 day. I afraid she die," said the girl. The woman turned her hot and beautiful face towards me. "Where's my husband?" "He is downstairs and wishes to see you." "I will not see him. I will not see him." Then she seemed to drift into delirium. "A fiend! A fiend! Oh, what shall I do with this devil?" "Can I help you in any way?" "No, no one can help. It is finished. All is ruined. Whatever I do, all is ruined." The woman must have had some strange delusion. I could not imagine honest Bob Ferguson as a fiend or devil. "Madam," I said, "your husband loves you deeply. He is very sad about what has happened." Again she turned on me those shining eyes. "He loves me, yes, but do I not love him? Do I not love him enough to sacrifice myself rather than break his dear heart? That is how I love him, and yet he could think of me, he could speak of me in such a way. He is full of sorrow, but he cannot understand. No, he cannot understand, but he should trust." "Will you not see him?" I asked. "No, no, I cannot forget those terrible words or the look on his face. I will not see him. Go now, you can do nothing for me. Tell him only one thing. I want my child. I have a right to my child. That is the only message I send him." She turned her face to the wall and would not speak again. I went back to the room downstairs, where Ferguson and Holmes still sat by the fire. Ferguson listened sadly while I told him what had passed in the interview. "How can I send her the child?" he said. "How do I know what strange impulse might seize her? How can I forget how she rose from beside the baby with blood on her lips?" He shook with horror at the memory. "The child is safe with Mrs. Mason, and there he must stay." A neat maid, the only modern thing in the house, brought in some tea. While she was serving it, the door opened and a boy entered the room. He was a striking lad, pale-faced and fair-haired, with restless light blue eyes that suddenly shone with joy when they saw his father. He rushed forward and threw his arms around his neck like a loving girl. "Oh, Daddy," he cried, "I did not know you were coming yet. I should have been here to meet you. Oh, I am so happy to see you." Ferguson gently freed himself from the embrace, showing a little embarrassment. "Dear old boy," said he, patting the fair head with a tender hand. "I came early because my friends Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson agreed to come down and spend an evening with us." "Is that Mr. Holmes, the detective?" "Yes." The boy looked at us with sharp and to me rather unfriendly eyes. "What about your other child?" Mr. Ferguson asked Holmes. "May we see the baby?" "Ask Mrs. Mason to bring the baby down," said Ferguson. The boy went off with a strange uneven walk which showed my doctor's eye that he had a weak spine. Soon he returned, and behind him came a tall, thin woman carrying a very beautiful child in her arms. The baby had dark eyes and golden hair, a wonderful mix of Saxon and Latin. Ferguson clearly loved it, for he took it in his arms and held it tenderly. "How could anyone have the heart to hurt him?" he whispered, looking at the small red mark on the baby's little throat. At that moment I happened to look at Holmes and saw his face full of deep attention. His face was set like old ivory, and his eyes, after one glance at father and child, were fixed with eager curiosity on something at the other side of the room. Following his gaze, I guessed he was looking out through the window at the sad wet garden. A shutter outside was half closed and blocked the view, but Holmes was clearly watching the window. Then he smiled, and his eyes came back to the baby. On the soft little neck was the small red mark. Without a word, Holmes studied it carefully. At last he gently shook one of the tiny fists that waved before him. "Goodbye, little man. You have begun life in a strange way. Nurse, I would like a private word with you." He took her aside and spoke seriously for a few minutes. I only caught his last words. "I hope your worry will soon be over." The woman, who seemed sour and silent, went away with the child. "What is Mrs. Mason like?" asked Holmes. "She does not look pleasant, as you can see, but she has a good heart and is devoted to the child." "Do you like her, Jack?" Holmes suddenly asked the boy. The boy's quick, changeable face darkened and he shook his head. "Jackie has very strong likes and dislikes," said Ferguson, putting his arm around him. "Luckily, I am one of his likes." The boy cooed and laid his head on his father's chest. Ferguson gently freed himself. "Run along, little Jackie," he said, watching his son with loving eyes until he was gone. "Now, Mr. Holmes," he continued, "I really feel I have brought you here for nothing. What can you do except give me your sympathy? From your point of view, it must be a very delicate and difficult matter." "It is certainly delicate," said my friend with a smile, "but I have not found it very complex. It is a case for reasoning, and when this first reasoning is confirmed, point by many independent facts, then the guess becomes truth, and we can say with confidence that we have reached our goal. In fact, I had reached it before we left Baker Street. The rest has only been watching and confirming." Ferguson pressed his big hand to his lined forehead. "For heaven's sake, Holmes," he said in a rough voice, "if you know the truth, do not keep me waiting. What is my position? What shall I do? I do not care how you found your facts, if only they are true. Of course, I owe you an explanation, and you will have it, but allow me to handle it in my own way. Watson, can the lady see us? She is ill, but she is fully reasonable. Very good. It is only in her presence that we can clear everything. Let us go to her." "She will not see me," cried Ferguson. "Oh, yes, she will," said Holmes. He quickly wrote a few lines on a sheet of paper. "At least you can go in, Watson. Please give the lady this note." I went upstairs again and handed the note to Dolores, who carefully opened the door. A minute later I heard a cry inside, a cry of both joy and surprise. Dolores looked out. "She will see them. She will listen," she said. At my call, Ferguson and Holmes came upstairs. As we entered the room, Ferguson stepped towards his wife, who had raised herself in bed, but she held out her hand to stop him. He sank into an armchair while Holmes sat beside him, bowing to the lady, who stared at him with wide amazement. "I think we can do without Dolores," said Holmes. "Oh, very well, madam. If you wish her to stay, I have no objection. Now, Mr. Ferguson, I am a busy man with many duties, and my methods must be short and direct. The quickest surgery is the least painful. Let me first say what will ease your mind. Your wife is very good, very loving, and very badly treated woman." Ferguson sat up with a cry of joy. "Prove that, Mr. Holmes, and I will be in your debt forever." "I will do so, but in doing so I must wound you deeply in another way. I care nothing so long as you clear my wife. Everything else is nothing compared to that. Then let me explain the reasoning that passed through my mind in Baker Street. The idea of a vampire was absurd to me. Such things do not happen in criminal cases in England. And yet your report was exact. You had seen the lady rise from beside the child's cot with blood on her lips. I did. Did it not occur to you that a bleeding wound may be sucked for some reason other than to draw blood? Was there not a queen in English history who sucked such a wound to draw out poison? Poison? A South American household. My instinct felt the meaning of those weapons on the wall even before my eyes saw them. It might have been another poison, but that was my thought. When I saw the empty quiver beside the little bird bough, it was exactly what I expected. If the child had been pricked with one of those arrows dipped in curare or some other deadly drug, it would mean death unless the poison was sucked out. And the dog, if someone wished to use such a poison, would he not first test it to be sure it had not lost its power? I had not expected the dog, but when I saw him I understood, and he fitted into my chain of thought. Now, do you see? Your wife feared such an attack. She saw it done and saved the child's life, but she could not bring herself to tell you everything because she knew how you loved the boy and feared it would break your heart. Jackie! I watched him while you were fondling the child just now. His face was clearly shown in the glass of the window, with the shutter behind. I saw there such jealousy, such cruel hatred, as I have seldom seen in any human face. My Jackie! You must face it, Mr. Ferguson. It is more painful because it is a twisted love, an insane and exaggerated love for you, and perhaps for his dead mother, that has driven him to act. His whole soul is filled with hatred for this fine child, whose health and beauty are so different from his own weakness. Good God, it's unbelievable. Have I spoken the truth, madam? The lady was weeping, her face hidden in the pillows. Now she turned to her husband. How could I tell you, Bob? I knew what a terrible blow it would be to you. It seemed better to wait, and that you should hear it from other lips than mine. When this gentleman, who seems to have magic powers, wrote that he knew everything, I was glad. I think a year at sea would be my medicine for Master Jackie, said Holmes, rising from his chair. Only one thing is still unclear, madam. We can understand your anger against Master Jackie. There's a limit to a mother's patience, but how did you dare to leave the baby these last 2 days? I had to tell Mrs. Mason. She knew. Exactly. I thought so. Ferguson was standing by the bed, choking, his hands stretched out and shaking. This, I think, is the time for us to leave, Watson, whispered Holmes. If you will take one arm of the 2 faithful Dolores, I will take the other. There now, he added, as he closed the door behind him. I think we may leave them to settle the rest by themselves. I have only one more note about this case. It is the letter which Holmes wrote as his final answer to the one with which the story began. It was as follows. Baker Street, November 21st. R.E. Vampires. Sir, referring to your letter of the 19th, I wish to say that I have looked into the matter of your client, Mr. Robert Ferguson, of Ferguson and Muirhead, tea brokers of Mincing Lane, and that it has been brought to a satisfactory end. Thank you for your recommendation. I am, sir, faithfully yours, Sherlock Holmes.